You know you are 60 when you are in a lift and your favorite song comes on, and getting lucky means a short wait at the doctor's office. The jokes are well-worn and predictable, but are unlikely to make us chuckle if we have somehow managed to complete 6 decades on the planet. Reaching that milestone tomorrow, I'm happy to sing my age from the rooftops, rather than ducking sheepishly for cover or changing the subject. Other Australians to blow out 60 candles this year include actor Richard Roxburgh, director Baz Luhrmann, and Rugby World Cup winner David Campese, while former Prime Minister Julia Gillard passed the landmark last September, a month after former US President Barack Obama. To put things into perspective, we had all finished high school before Australia's current Prime Minister had even started his secondary education, and almost 3 years before NSW Premier Dominic Perrottet was born. For me, getting to 60 is a precious moment to be savoured and celebrated, and certainly nothing to be ashamed of. All the ups and downs, joys and miseries, triumphs and rejections give us a beautiful perspective that even our 50-year-old selves did not have. In theory, if not always in practice, many of the rough edges have been smoothed out by now. As David Bowie once said, aging is an extraordinary process where you become the person you always should have been. The writer of this article, with his mother, Diana, in 1962, when Robert Menzies was Prime Minister. Those of us born in 1962 came into the world when Robert Menzies was Australia's Prime Minister, when President John F. Kennedy and the US were transfixed by the Cuban Missile Crisis, and when the UK heard the classic lineup of the Beatles for the first time. Indeed, Paul McCartney's When I'm 64, doing the garden and knitting a sweater by the fireside, suddenly seems relevant. Most Australians say ageism is a problem. So why are so many Australians less than jubilant about hitting the big 6-0? There might be a clue in last year's survey on ageism. The Australian Human Rights Commission unearthed some shocking statistics about our nation's attitudes towards older people in its report, What's Age Got to Do with It? It found 90% of Australians its researchers spoke to believe that ageism exists. 83% say it is a problem, while more than half, 63%, had experienced ageism in the past 5 years. Among the key findings across the survey's 11 focus groups, Australians see older people as nice, if frail, onlookers to life, rather than key participants. People in their 60s are not always given jobs but, instead, are offered help they don't want, the ageism survey finds. The survey also found that those in the 40 to 61 year age group are most likely to encounter ageism in being turned down for a job, while those above 62 years of age will experience it by being helped without being asked. A Canadian friend in Melbourne working in sales refuses to let his company know his true age. He's 56, but they think he's 43, and has gone to the trouble of setting himself up as a sole trader, so he won't have to disclose his date of birth on an employment form. Being 50 plus in the workforce in Australia in 2022 is like being gay in the 1970s. It's something you can't be open about if you want to get a job and keep it, he said. But is 60, statistically, entering a higher risk category in terms of COVID-19 outcomes, actually old? It certainly was in 1962, when the average life expectancy for an Australian man was just 67.84 years. Based on those numbers, I would not be around to watch the 2032 Olympics in my adopted hometown of Brisbane in just 10 years' time. Today, Australia's life expectancy has risen to 81.5 years for men and 85.3 years for women. How did baby boomers survive the 1970s? Loading. That seems almost a miracle when you consider what Australian 60-year-olds grew up with: asbestos in our houses, cigarettes in our lungs, and not so healthy food on our dinner tables, touted as fuel to help us grow strong. From margarine as a substitute for fatty butter to sickeningly sweet chocolate milk drinks to processed breakfast cereals, full of sugar and preservatives, and meat pies with sauce for school lunches. It is a wonder we survived. And let's not forget going out all day in the sun to play sport, wearing nothing more than zinc cream on the nose and a terry toweling hat. Loading. With no internet, pay television or video games, we spent plenty of time outdoors, running amok in the neighborhood on bikes, billy carts, and bushwalks. A couple of months before the pandemic hit, my class of 1979, at an all-boys state high school, had a 40-year reunion dinner, alongside older baby boomers. So I had a chance to see up close what our generation is like. Unemotional, yet curious about life. Compared to the early baby boomers, we are not very demonstrative. There weren't many hugs, tears or gushing emotions, and the sentimentality was definitely kept in check. However, I felt at home within a group that seemed well-read, knowledgeable about Australia's history, and curious about the ever-evolving, digital world around us. And, yes, as a 60-year-old working alongside computer-native millennials, it can be challenging just to keep up. The Old Falconians dinner in 2019 brought North Sydney boys' high school classes from 1979 and 1969 together for a reunion. The atmosphere of competition that may have flavored earlier reunions had disappeared. With many rebuilding after painful divorces, looking after 80 or 90-something parents, or helping adult children find their way in life, no one cared about what car you drove, the clothes you were wearing, or your latest gains on the stock market. We also agreed that many of Australia and the world's pivotal moments in the 1960s and 70s are intertwined with our own childhood memories. From the change to decimal currency in 1966, a man walking on the moon in 1969, Gough Whitlam's It's Time election in 1972, and Australia's switch to colour television in 1975. Neil Armstrong's giant leap for mankind was the same day I saw snow for the first time, having watched the moon walk through a Kuma shop window with my family before driving into a Thredbo blizzard in a mud-brown Ford Fairmont station wagon. The Dasey family arrives in Thredbo on July 21, 1969, 3 hours after watching Neil Armstrong walk on the moon through a shop window. And that's partly why the accumulation of decades and memories means that I'm open and comfortable being this age. To the overly serious and career-focused Generation X and the self-obsessed and tech-masterful millennials, turning 60 is a badge of honor and a way of saying, hey, I'm at a different place in my life now, all that stuff doesn't seem to be important anymore. Workers less threatened by older colleagues. Sharing that number in the workplace seems to have a neutralizing effect, perhaps because people don't see you as a threat anymore. That's more of a positive than a negative, because office politics seem to come less into play. Most retirement villages across Australia now welcome residents in their 50s. At 60, a few things alarm us. Why parts of the body sometimes hurt or seize up for no apparent reason, how our eyes don't work as well as they used to, and the deterioration of our short-term memory. Also, how have retirement villages become over 50s lifestyle resorts? On one hand, we're being told to work longer. The official retirement age is now 67, yet we're being encouraged to move into an old folks' home once we pass 49. Puzzlingly, some Australians seem in a hurry to grow old compared to our North American and European friends, which perhaps contributes to the findings of last year's ageism survey that suggests that once you pass 50, to say nothing of 60, it's all downhill. More than half of those surveyed agreed that making jokes about someone's age is more socially acceptable than joking about race or gender. David Campese says everyone loses if 60-year-olds are not able to pass on their expertise in the workforce. Ageism is a big problem in Australia. Having returned home in 2017 after coaching in South Africa for 11 years over 2 stints, David Campese agrees that decades of accomplishments won't always open doors once you pass 50. Ageism is a big problem in Australia compared to other countries, 59-year-old Campese said. It doesn't seem fair that workers approaching 60 may be at the top of their game in terms of SS, knowledge and life experience, and yet are overlooked for younger people who may have achieved a lot less. It means that everyone loses. And getting through your 50s is certainly not guaranteed, as we were starkly reminded last month, with the heart attack of cricket legend Shane Warne and Victorian Senator Kimberley Kitching. Sadly, a couple of good mates involved